So, Hwalani, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I grew up in Limpopo. I come from a small village called Fondwe. That's about 15 kilometers from the city center of Thohoyandou. I come from a family of 6 children. I was raised by both parents. My father was an English teacher. He's actually on retirement at the moment, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I grew up in a very safe environment and a nurturing environment. And then when I finished my high school, I then went to study for my degree at University of Pretoria. And then as a follow-up later on, I did my honors with them, and I also did my master's with University of Pretoria. And I'm currently studying for a PhD degree with the University of Pretoria.
And I see, Hwalani, you also did a fintech degree at University of Cape Town, right?
Yes, that's correct. So that was actually because, you know, the world is changing. And I think when I was actually going through some of the programs that they had at UCT, I thought it would be quite relevant for me to really focus on disruption in the financial industry, because we're seeing technology playing a massive role in changing how businesses are operating. We've seen fintech and insurtech as well as health tech popping up from everywhere. So it is quite important as a leader to really understand what's happening there so that you can then be able to embrace what is happening in that space. And that course particularly has actually played a wonderful role in shaping my thinking in my current role at the bank.
Now, Hwalani, looking back at your early days, can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
It's a very interesting one for me because when I was little, I always wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a medical doctor. I had set my eyes on that. And, you know, it was quite interesting because at the end of the day, I didn't go and study medicine, but my parents can tell you every single application I sent out to the university was to try and do medicine. Unfortunately, my math was not so great. And as a result, when I finished matric, I needed to do some soul searching and decide on what would be next for me. And one of the gentlemen who's actually still my mentor to this day and also a family member encouraged me to consider other careers. And I subsequently found myself deciding to go the finance route and studying a BCom degree instead of the medicine. And in hindsight, when I look at it now, you know, I wanted to be a doctor, and here I am trying to do my PhD and becoming a doctor in a different way. So perhaps I'll just still be a doctor, but a different doctor, an academic one.
So is it fair to say, Hwalani, that today you're healing people financially?
That's correct. Yes, I am, because, you know, I think as somebody who works in the bank, you realize that you work very closely with people and their finances. You know, I was saying to somebody just the other day that you become a psychologist, you become a lawyer, you become a lot of things because you're working with people's money, and they trust you with that, and they trust you with their secrets as well. So you actually are right. We heal people, but just differently, working with money.
Right. And Hwalani, who inspired you in your early days?
Look, my parents have always inspired me. They raised us in such a way that they taught us that there were no limits. You know, my dad was always around to encourage us to do our absolute best in everything. You know, when you come from a family of 6 children, there are a lot of other children to worry about. But I think for me, what stands out with both of them is that they never compared us. We actually could go out there and do our level best based on the ability that one had. So we were never raised in a competitive environment amongst each other, but to embrace what we are good at. And mom, on the other hand, was a very strict parent. My mother wanted us to do our level best. So if you go to school and you come back with things that are not looking so great, she would ask very tough questions, and you would have to be debate with her as to what happened, where you got things wrong, and what you're going to do in future. So as I was growing up, there was a lot of accountability in my family for us to always focus on our careers, but also focus on being the best. They inspired me because I think, that upbringing of being told that you are worth more, you can do more, is what I still see working for me today, because I trust and believe I can be able to do anything.
And I believe you started your career at University of Pretoria. Is that right?
Yes, I was actually a student at that time, and it's a wonderful question that you're asking me. And as a student, I wanted to earn some extra money. I wanted to have a little bit of independence because I had left my hometown, which is around 500 km from Gauteng province, which is in Pretoria. And I needed a little bit of independence. And as a student, I wanted to go and do a bit of work. And I went to this lady, a wonderful lady called Mrs. Cousins, and I said, "You need to give me a job." And she's like, "I don't have a job." I'm like, "Just give me something." And she's like, "I don't know what I'm going to give you." And I'm like, "Okay, I can do anything." And ultimately, she gave me a job. And that was my first paying job. And that job was actually, during those days, we had to send registration forms through to students via the post. So I had to sit with, like, in the mail room, lots and lots of students' registration forms, and send those registration forms via the post to all the students. I think at that time my salary was 50 cents per envelope, but it was phenomenal for me to have a paycheck at the end of the day.
Now, Hwalani, talking about the University of Pretoria, one of your fellow students just won the gold medal at the Olympics. Tatiana,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell us, how did this inspire you? How did you experience this moment of magic?
Look, I think it just really shows us that anything is possible if you are very clear on your goals. I was very proud of her, and I looked at that video that you shared, and it was just so phenomenal for me because, they were fellow South Africans. They're in the other side of the world, not in South Africa, but they were embracing the South African culture, really rooting up for her. And the young woman went there, she won, she set a new record. And for all of us, it really just says it doesn't matter where you are based, it doesn't matter how you grow up, and it doesn't matter which country you come from. You actually can go anywhere in a global stage and be competitive and do very well. So we celebrate her. As a University of Pretoria alumni, for me, I was just like, yeah, this is wonderful to have one of the people who was a student at our university standing on that global stage, representing us as a university, but also representing women and the rest of South Africa. So we're very proud of her.
Now, Hwalani, you have a very impressive profile. You've been working for the likes of Alexander Forbes, the CSIR, some of the big banks, Nedbank, EBSA, at the moment, obviously Standard Bank. And you're a senator at the World Business Angels and a board member at Women in Tech. Looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point, or maybe a number of turning points where things could have gone different?
Let me mention two, but I'll start with this one. So after years of working in communications and marketing and having tried to run my own business and do a lot of things, I think the career change for me is when I decided to start afresh as a financial advisor. And that's how I actually joined the financial industry. And I became a financial advisor. And you alluded to it, that I was healing people through money. But, that experience was phenomenal for me in the sense that I got to understand a lot more about the psychology of money, how people actually deal with finances. And it was not only talking to the clients, but also talking to me as an individual. But the biggest and the most amazing thing out of that experience is that I got to learn firsthand the different things that I need to work on as an individual. And at that time, I was obviously a young adult, was earning an income, but I had a lot of things that were not in place. And through that job, I got to learn that I needed to look differently. Accelerated by that is the fact that after joining the industry, I also lost a very instrumental person in my due to a challenge with cancer. And when that happened, there were also issues financially, and one got to experience firsthand how difficult it can be. It actually, I think, gave me the willpower to stay in the industry with the thinking of changing other women's lives, but also really understanding that we continuously need to have conversation around money, no matter how uncomfortable it can be. So as a result, I decided to stay in the financial industry and various people in all walks of life.
And
the second one for me has got to do with the work that I do with Women in Tech. Women in Tech is a global movement that was started by a lady called Ayumi. Fantastic opportunity for us as women to work together as global citizens around technology, but to try and get more and more women into STEM careers and get more and more women into education and get more women understanding that you can actually go and be a contender in a career that is actually filled by a lot of male individuals or male counterparts. And as a result of being a board member in South Africa for Women in Tech, I think for me, the key thing here is that for any future leader, technology will be at the forefront of your leadership. So as a result of that, I have got a turning point in the sense that right now, when I look at things, technology is no longer a conversation that I shy away from. I'm very interested in some of these meetings to know what we are doing differently from a technology perspective, because I understand its place and I've embraced it as a lead. And I think that's where the turning point has been in my career at this point in time.
And tell us, Hwalani, what is driving you today?
Yeah, in a current space where there's COVID, one has to find something to continuously drive you to achieve your goals. So for me, it's really a strong emotional commitment to my own personal goals, and the willingness as well, and the ability to learn quickly from mistakes. I am quite goal oriented. There are things that I've set for myself to achieve. And as a result of that, I look at those goals almost on a daily basis and really say, which steps am I taking to edge closer to that? And the commitment that I have for myself to get those goals actually drive me. But it's also being in a position to share some of these goals with my family members. And in this particular case, specifically, my kids, where I tell them I want to achieve this, I want to do this. And then, they own you, they hold you accountable. And as a result, you get a lot of questions. So are you there? What are you doing? How are you getting there? And that commitment to those goals is what's driving me, trying every day to be the best, but also remembering that as long as you are still alive and you still are present today, you can edge closer to the goal and be able to achieve it. Somebody is not in the same position as you.
So, Hwalani, are you saying you're sharing your goals with your children and they are holding you accountable?
Yes, they're very good at that. I'm telling you. I mean, I've got a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. I share goals. I write goals every year. I go and I do a kick exercise with them. And as a result of that, they get to experience. And I go like, look at this. I've done this. Do you think I've done it well? And they're like, yes. And we go through that. And I've seen that also working with them, because right now I hear my kids talking about their goals as well in terms of their own schoolwork. I hear them talking about where they didn't do so well, where they want to improve, because at the forefront of that, it's really just also teaching them that they need to hold me accountable as much as I hold them accountable. And it makes it so interesting because it's no longer just about a Hwalani goal, but it is a family goal as well.
Wow, that is very powerful. And I wish more parents were doing that. Now, Hwalani, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but What does the future of leadership mean to you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question because we've seen quite a lot of change recently. And in my view, the future leaders will need to have a very different mindset. We need to be global citizens. I think our mindset has to always be thinking about what's happening globally, especially as the world is becoming increasingly connected. You cannot be a leader who is not always thinking of what's happening from a global context. I think COVID has also accelerated this conversation where we're seeing more and more people realizing that it's not only a South African issue, it's not an American issue, but it is a global issue. And that therefore, as leaders in our thinking, we always need to be thinking of whatever aspect of our work from a global perspective. The second one for me, which is very important, and I think I connect to this one more, is around servantship. I think as a leader, one should always be practicing humility. It is key in the sense that when you are able to practice humility, you are actually good and better at serving the people who work with you. I think the role of a leader is not necessarily telling people what to do, but to be their servant. And if you have that at the forefront of your thinking every day, it becomes so much easier for you as a leader. And lastly, future leaders, in my view, should behave like explorers. I like this, and I think kids can teach us a lot of this. We need to be open to new ideas and embrace constant change. I'm talking about a curious mindset, a mindset of saying, I don't know what I think I know, and I need to learn more. And with that, we then can be able to come up with new ideas and be able to innovate as well.
Now, Hwalani, what have you learned from your own leadership journey that you consider most important for building and empowering future leaders?
So as a leader, I have learned that leaders need to be great coaches. We need to be able to motivate, inspire, and engage with our teams and people that we work with. People are always going to look up to you for, connection. They're going to look up to you for motivation as well. But at the forefront of that, we need to treat the people right. And we also need to look at them as people more than workers. Because if you are leading as an individual, you must always think that you need to engage with people, lead them so that they can become better than you as an individual. And that for me is key.
And Hwalani, when you address future leaders, and maybe even your children, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build their own personal brand?
Look, I think we cannot run away from social media and what it does and its relevance in our society right now. So for example, if anybody reaches out to you, the first instinct and the first thing that you want to do is to go and maybe check up on their profile and really get to see who they are. So in my view, social media is quite important. So leaders need to stay relevant. And I think as an individual, I always need to embrace that I cannot shy away from social media. And I would like to say to leaders, that's exactly what we need to do. We can play a role through social media by shaping content and thought leadership that is instrumental, not only for other people's growth, but also for our own growth. Through the thought leadership that we are sharing, people get to have a view of who we are, and we also get an opportunity to change lives. And I think our audience can learn a lot from us as individuals. So strategically as a leader, you will always have to think of yourself as a brand. So you cannot separate yourself from your personal brand. So you need to look at social media as a powerful tool for you to utilize so that you can stand out as an individual. And in order to do that, I think it's important to have very clear definition of branding goals that you need for yourself so that you can use clear strategies and tactics to build it up. But social media is here to stay. We need as leaders to be at the forefront of it and be able to share wonderful messages and embrace that as part of our personal branding as well.
Now, Hwalani, what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So there's constant change around us. So I think leaders need to have constant innovation, or they will be challenged around constant innovation. We are going to see that leaders are going to have challenges if they do not have emotional intelligence as well as empathy. So if I really just look at, for example, the constant innovation that we need to have, it's important that to overcome this challenge, that you as a leader have the ability to get everyone in the organization, irrespective of which role they play. So from executives to employees, get those people to be involved in developing an environment of innovation, and make sure that you are rewarding their creativity as well. Because what we tend to see is that we have leaders wanting to, say there is change and embrace it, but not allowing for that creativity to happen in organizations. I want to move on to emotional intelligence. I think that's another challenge. So as a leader, it is crucial that you have the ability to persuade and influence others, really be in a position to convince them to achieve those goals. Because if you are able to do that, they trust you more, and then they work harder because you are actually elevating them as well. The last one, which I think is also quite crucial and very important, as one of the challenges, is obviously empathy. So the leaders of the future, you need to be a mentor to the people that you are leading. So we need to have that ability to show empathy inside and outside the organization, because that to me will be at the forefront of setting you apart. So it cannot only be I'm empathetic because I'm right now in Standard Bank. I need to be able to show that I can be empathetic to anyone that I might be engaging with. Even through social media, I need to still be able to show that empathy.
Now, Hwalani, since you're touching on skills, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills that you would want to factor in?
Technology, being digitally fluent. I think we need leaders who will have these skills, in my view. Leaders will be able to embrace technology and be tech savvy and understand that it's at the forefront of creating, new ventures in organizations, but also cost management, containment through technology, and a lot of advantages that one can have through embracing technology. So definitely, I would say that for any future leaders, any digitally connected stuff or courses or tech-savvy stuff, that's where we need to get more skills in. I think the other one, which is the last one that I think is very important for me, is having a futuristic view. We need leaders who are going to be able to think of multiple scenarios, always thinking of what is likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, and view it in such a way that they will be able to create businesses that can be sustainable and thrive for the future and continuously contribute to economies. So that futuristic view in my thinking is also important for skills that we need to have. So if I were to change the curriculum, I will add that. Something like empathy and self-awareness, maybe that's also there in mindfulness. We need to teach people around mindfulness as leaders, and then the self-awareness as well.
Now, Hwalani, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, I was, just really looking at this one. I think I've mentored quite a lot of people in different ways, and I think as a woman and having the access to other women and being able to mentor them, you tend to find that a lot of women actually struggle with personal branding, and this is one of the ones where I mentored one of the leaders, upcoming leaders, in one of the businesses, for them to really try and embrace personal branding and not shy away from being able to talk about their achievements. I think society has prescribed to women specifically or frowned upon this idea of being able to talk about what we are good at. And as a result, we stay away and shy away from personal branding or even talking about our own successes, particularly as women. And one of the leaders, upcoming leaders that I engaged with as one of my mentees, I had actually gotten to a point where I showed her how to get across the message in a palatable way where people will not frown upon, but always guard jealously around her own personal branding and never sit in a position where she cannot share what she's done, how she's done it, because if you don't do that, there is no growth, or people might not even, pay attention to you. And therefore, things such as promotions or being offered other job opportunities and things that we're dealing with, such as gender, parity and the ability for women to earn better, income and all of that will not change if we don't work on some of these things. So I'm very proud of what those women have been able to achieve, the ability to work on their personal branding, but the ability to also talk about our own achievements, which subsequently led to her getting a promotion in a job in a world where she thought it was not going to be possible. The second one, I think it's important to mention this. I had one of the up and recent graduate. And I mentioned that it's important because I think we're dealing with young people that are going through a lot of challenges. Young people in South Africa who went, in some cases, to university with the ideal thinking that they will finish, graduate, and get a job. But we're finding that their confidence has dipped so much because of the aspect that in South Africa, we're not having a lot of jobs and a lot of our young people are unemployed. And this graduate was actually dealing with confidence issues and anxiety issues, and the inability to actually go and sit and talk about herself in an environment where she can be given a job. So we worked on a lot of things. We worked on confidence building. We worked on a curriculum vitae. We worked on practicing for some of these interviews. And I got her to engage with some leaders in the business as well as with people who are in recruitment spaces for her to get the confidence and understand how to approach, some of these things. And as a result, I sit now with not just somebody that I've been mentoring, but somebody who's now earning a living and in a space where she can grow, but also she realizes that she is capable and that she can actually go and compete with others as well.
Thank you. And Hwalani, looking back over your own leadership journey, who are the type of role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
I think for me, the one is, I'll mention Nelson Mandela. I think, when you just look at his level of empathy and his level of servantship, which I think is very, very important. He is one of those people who has got key instrumental leadership things that you can learn. He has taught us as South Africans to be able to embrace each other, the diversity. If you really look at what's happening now globally, diversity is very, very important. And I think there are key lessons that we can get from him. And the fact that we're a rainbow nation as South Africa has really taught us that you can embrace people from all walks of life. And that is what is needed for the future of any business, being in a position to diversify, but also creating for that diversity in your business. That will be one. And then from a woman's point of view, I think I have got Sheryl Sandberg as one of those. She wrote a book on Lean In, which I think for me was quite influential in the sense that it talks about some of the struggles that we have as women that we always have to guard against. And her leadership, in a way, is something that I look up to because I think I look at her and I say, this is one person who have actually understood it at a very high position and be able to influence some of us as women as well. The last one, and I will not do justice if I don't mention this one, but I look at somebody like a Michelle Obama. Look, this is a woman who actually evolved in so many different ways, from being a lawyer to being a mother to being the first lady, but do it so graciously. And for me, ultimately getting her PhD degree, and I really think in terms of her leadership, she has done it all, but managed to do it so gracefully, but not shied away from controversial or difficult conversation when it was needed. And for any leader out there, we need to be in a position to have courageous conversation, but still lead in such a way that people can look at us and say, I want to be like her or him, because even though we're having courageous conversation, I can still learn a lot from this leadership. It's basically walking the talk, in my view.
Thank you. And tell us, Hwalani, how can our listeners connect with you and where should they follow you?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I also recently joined Clubhouse. My handle is @Hwalani for Clubhouse, and my LinkedIn is there. If they just go and type my name, they should be able to easily connect with me.
And last but not least, Hwalani, what is your message for the millions of young people who are looking to start a career, but they're not really sure how to go about it? And what are really the important success factors today?
Yeah, so I think for any young person out there right now is to say, what am I good at first and foremost? And for some of our young people, they might have studied something where maybe it's not giving them the job opportunity that they are looking for, or what they think they should be doing. If you're a lawyer, you should now be a lawyer. I think they need to embrace whatever opportunity they can get. What I've found is that sometimes what we have studied or what we think we should be doing ultimately is not where we end. And sometimes you can go and start a job that you deem as an entry-level job that is not maybe linked to what you want to do, but ultimately later on find yourself using those skills. So nothing can go to waste. They must engage as much as possible to get any opportunity so that they can get out there. But as soon as they get there, in my view, they should not relax and try and work as hard as they can, because that first job ultimately will determine your second one and your third one. I think also embrace entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is another way for us to actually get the economy active again. So we need a lot of our young people to go out there and start businesses and be able to provide for their families. But the more and more we have entrepreneurs in South Africa, the more we can create employment. So our young people need to look at all of these unconventional ways and not only look at being an employee, but also look at being an employer of the future. And hopefully we can also have unicorns coming out of Africa as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Hwalani, so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and paying it forward and being a role model to so many people.
I really appreciate having me. Thank you so much.